The Zalthoran royal palace was never truly quiet. Day and night, its silver halls carried sound. Soft steps of servants, sharp boots of guards, low voices of nobles, the hum of floating machines, the music of the great light fountains. The palace was the heart of the empire, and the heart never slept. But on that day, everything changed. The sound died all at once. The great throne hall, usually full of whispers and movement, fell into a silence so deep that it felt wrong. It was the kind of silence that made every living being hold still. Even the air seemed heavy. At the center of that silence stood a human man. His name was Elias Varon. He stood alone on the black crystal floor, low directly beneath the high steps of the royal throne. He looked small in that enormous chamber. Above him, long banners of the empire hung from the shining ceiling. Golden lights burned across the walls. Tall alien guards stood, like statues with silver weapons in their hands, and every eye in the hall was fixed on him. Elias tried not to move. He could feel the stare of the court pressing down on him from every side. Nobles in rich robes sat in curved rows along the hall. Military officers stood near the throne with hard faces and cold eyes. Advisors watched him as if he were a problem that needed to be solved. None of them trusted him to them. He was only a human, an outsider, a stranger from a rough world far beyond. The Empire's inner stars. Humans were spoken of in Zaltharan space, with caution and doubt. Some said they were brave. Some said they were violent. Others called them reckless, emotional, and impossible to control. Few in the palace had ever seen one with their own eyes. Now one stood in the center of the royal court, and no one knew what to do with him. Elias kept his hands open at his sides. He did not want to appear afraid, but fear was already there, cold and steady inside him. He had survived a ship attack, deep space, and the long journey to this alien world. But standing in that palace felt more dangerous than any battlefield. At the top of the steps sat Queen Seralis. She ruled the Zalthoran Empire from a throne made of white crystal and living metal. Her crown shone with blue light. Her face was calm, unreadable, and proud. She looked down at Elias with the still eyes of someone who had judged worlds before speaking a word. Beside her stood generals, royal guards, and court officials. No one spoke. The silence stretched longer. Elias had no idea what the queen was thinking. He had been brought there under royal order, but no one had explained why. He had expected questions, maybe anger, maybe a trial. Instead, he got silence. That was worse. A human mind always wanted answers. Silence gave none. Then movement came from the queen's right side. It was small at first, just the shift of a silver robe. But everyone in the hall noticed. Princess Aurelia had stepped forward. The change in the room was instant. Several guards tightened their hands on their weapons. Few nobles leaned forward in surprise. One old advisor looked openly afraid. Elias had heard the name before reaching the capital. Aurelia, daughter of the queen, brilliant, cold, untouchable. The future of the empire. He had also heard something else. She never broke protocol yet. Now she was walking down from the royal platform. Her steps were slow and silent. Her long, pale robes flowed behind her like moonlight on water. A small silver crown rested above her dark eyes. She was young compared to the queen, but there was something powerful in the way she carried herself. She did not look nervous. She did not look uncertain. She looked focused, and she was walking straight toward the human. Elias felt his heartbeat rise. He did not know if he should bow, speak, or stay still. No one had prepared him for this. Every lesson he had learned on alien customs suddenly felt useless. Aurelia stopped a few steps away from him. For 1 second, the whole hall seemed frozen in time. She looked at him carefully, as if searching for something only she could see. Elias met her eyes and found no hatred there, no disgust, no fear. That surprised him more than anything else. The princess took one more step. A guard near the throne moved half an inch, ready to act, but the queen raised one finger and the guard stopped, still. No one spoke. Elias could hear his own breathing now, slow, careful. The silence around him had become unbearable. Then, Princess Aurelia did the impossible. She reached out and wrapped both arms around him. The hall did not react at first. It could not. The shock was too great. Elias stood completely still as her arms closed around him. He did not understand what was happening. He barely understood what he was allowed to do. Her hold was not violent. It was not formal either. It was real, warm, certain. A public embrace, from the daughter of the alien queen to a human man. Then, the meaning of it hit the room. A sharp breath came from somewhere in the nobles' row. One officer whispered something under his breath. Another dropped his gaze as if he had seen something sacred or dangerous. The silence returned. But now it was different, not empty, shocked, afraid, because everyone in that hall knew what Elias did not. In Zalthoran tradition, a royal embrace was not a simple act of comfort. It was a declaration. It meant trust, protection, honor. It placed the embraced person under the royal bloodline itself. No outsider had received such an honor in living memory, and certainly not a human. Princess Aurelia slowly stepped back, but her eyes remained on Elias. The queen rose from her throne. That single movement sent a wave of tension through the hall at last. Queen Sorelith spoke, her voice calm and cold. Let no one in this chamber forget what has been witnessed today. No one moved, no one dared speak. Elias stood in the center of the throne hall, more confused than ever, while the empire stared at him as if he had become something else entirely. And deep inside the palace, far behind the silence and the shining walls, something had already begun to change. 3 weeks before the silence in the palace, Elias Varon had been just another man on a cargo ship. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was not important in any great way. He worked in the lower engine deck of the freighter Mercy Dawn, a long and aging human vessel that carried machine parts, medical supplies, and food packs through the outer trade routes. His job was simple. He repaired power lines, checked fuel systems, and kept old machines alive for one more journey. It was honest work, and Elias liked it that way. He did not chase glory. He did not dream about fame. He only wanted a steady life and a ship that did not explode around him. Most days on the Mercy Dawn were quiet. The crew argued, laughed, worked, and complained like crews always did. Elias kept to himself, but everyone knew him. He was the kind of man who helped without being asked. If someone was tired, he took their shift. If someone was hurt, he stayed with them. If something broke, he fixed it. That was why the others trusted him, and that was why, when everything went wrong, people ran toward him. The attack came without warning. The ship had just crossed near a disputed border zone, a dark region of space that trade vessels usually avoided. The captain had taken the route to save time. It was a bad choice. At first, the sensors showed nothing. Then, the stars outside. The viewing screens bent strangely. A second later, 3 black ships came out of the dark. No signal, no warning, no demands. They opened fire at once. The first blast tore through the cargo side of the ship. The whole freighter shook like a dying animal. Lights exploded overhead. Steel screamed through the walls. Crew members hit the floor as alarms filled every deck. Elias had been inside the engine bay when the blast hit. He lost his balance and slammed into a control panel. Red warning lights flashed around him. The main power lines sparked. Smoke rolled through the narrow room. For one stunned second, he could hear nothing but the ringing in his ears. Then voices screamed over the emergency channel. Hull breach. Med bay is gone. Fire on deck 4. We lost navigation. The Mercy Dawn was dying. Elias pushed himself up and ran. He moved through shaking corridors full of smoke and broken metal. A door had collapsed near the service ladder, trapping 2 crew members under it. He did not stop to think. He pulled at the twisted frame until his hands bled, and somehow he got them free. One of them, a young loader named Finn, was crying in fear. Elias grabbed his shoulder. "Get to the pods," he said. "Move now." Finn ran. Elias kept going deeper into the damaged ship. Most people would have headed for escape. Elias went the other way. He found a medic trying to carry an injured pilot through a corridor full of fire suppression foam. He helped her. He reached the lower deck and forced open an emergency hatch for 6 trapped workers. He guided them toward the launch bay while the ship shook under enemy fire again and again. The captain ordered full evacuation, but evacuation on a broken cargo ship was never clean. One escape pod would not open. Another had lost pressure. Panic spread fast. People shoved, shouted, and made mistakes. Through it all, Elias stayed steady. He shouted clear orders, lifted the wounded, and pushed frightened crew toward safety. He was not trying to be brave. He simply could not leave, while others were still inside. That decision almost killed him. As the last pod launched, a second enemy blast struck the rear engine section. The force threw Elias across the bay. He hit the deck hard. A metal beam crashed down beside him. Fire burst from a wall panel. The launch doors jammed half open, and the air in the bay began to scream outward into space. Elias dragged himself toward a support rail and locked one arm around it. The bay lights flickered. The emergency voice counted system failure 10 seconds 9.8. He could not reach a pod now. They were all gone. He had made sure the others escaped. Now he was alone. The Mercy Dawn drifted broken and burning in the dark. Elias expected death. Instead, help came from a direction no human would have trusted. A silver warship dropped out of high orbit and cut through the battle zone like a blade. It was fast, silent, and far more advanced than the Raider ships. Its weapons flashed blue across space, and within moments, the attackers turned and fled. The silver ship bore the crest of the Zalthran Empire to Elias. Half-conscious and losing blood, it looked like a dream. A rescue beam locked onto the broken launch bay. Then everything went black. When he woke, he was inside a room of smooth white metal and soft blue lights. Strange machines floated above him. The air smelled clean and cold. His side was bandaged. His left arm was wrapped in healing gel. An alien medic stood nearby, watching him with narrow golden eyes. Elias tried to sit up, but pain stopped him. "Where am I?" he asked. The medic answered in careful trade language. "On a Zalthoran patrol vessel. You were recovered from a destroyed human ship. Recovered, not rescued." The word mattered. Elias looked around the room, suddenly aware of where he was. Among humans, stories about the Zaltharans were full of caution. They were powerful, proud, and not known for kindness to strangers near their borders. "Why am I alive?" he asked. The medic did not answer right away. Instead, the alien looked at him with a strange expression. "That question," the medic said at last, "is being asked by many on this ship." Elias frowned. He did not understand. But in the days that followed, he began to see the truth. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him, not only with suspicion, with confusion, because the human who should have died should never have been brought aboard a royal patrol ship. was already changing things without knowing it, and by the time they reached the Zalthoran capital, rumors about him had gone much farther than he had. Princess Aurelia had lived her whole life inside rules, from the day she could walk. She had been taught how to speak, how to stand, how to enter a room, how to leave one, how to hide every feeling that could be used against her. In the Zaltharan Empire, royalty was not allowed the freedom of ordinary hearts. A princess was not meant to be warm. She was meant to be perfect, and Aurelia was perfect at least. That was what the empire believed. She never stumbled in public. She never raised her voice. She never laughed too loudly, never trusted too quickly, never showed fear. In the royal court, many admired her, many feared her. Some even called her the silent star of the empire. They thought she felt nothing. They were wrong. Aurelia felt too much. That was her secret. Very few knew that the queen's daughter had been born with a rare mind sense, an ability so uncommon that even the royal healers spoke of it only in private. She could feel emotional waves from those around her. Not thoughts, not exact words, but the force behind them: fear, grief, anger, pride, lies, hunger, jealousy. And the palace was full of all of them. To everyone else, the great halls looked beautiful. To Aurelia, they often felt unbearable. A room full of nobles could feel louder than a battlefield. Smiling faces carried hidden poison. Polite words hid ambition. Every banquet, every council meeting, every formal event became a storm inside her mind. She learned early that if she reacted to it, she would lose control. So she built walls around herself. That was why she became cold. That was why she kept distance from nearly everyone. That was why she never touched. Anyone touch made it stronger. A brush of the hand, a formal greeting, even standing too close to someone in pain could leave her shaking for hours. Royal tutors called her disciplined. The queen called her strong. But Aurelia knew the truth. She was not cold because she wished to be. She was cold because it was the only way to survive. Then the human arrived. She first heard of Elias Varan through quiet reports from the patrol ship that had recovered him. The reports were unusual. Wounded officer, close to death and trapped in panic, had calmed when the human spoke to him. A frightened child from a servant family had stopped crying after sitting near him in the medical ward. Even one of the ship's security overseers, a hard and suspicious commander, had noted that crew agitation reduced in the human's presence. At first, Aurelia assumed it was coincidence. Then she read more. Every report had the same strange pattern. Elias did not threaten anyone. He did not flatter anyone. He did not demand special treatment. Yet tension around him seemed to drop. Fear softened. Anger weakened. Even those who distrusted him found it difficult to remain hostile for long. That made no sense. Aurelia requested the full records in private. The queen allowed it, though not without a warning. He is human, Queen Sorelith had said. Do not mistake calm behavior for harmless nature. Aurelia had bowed and said nothing. But that night, alone in her chamber, she read every report again. There was no trick in them, no sign of manipulation, no pattern of deception. If anything, the human seemed painfully ordinary. He repaired machines. He helped wounded people. He answered questions honestly. He asked for nothing. That should have made him less interesting. Instead, it made him impossible to ignore. When the patrol ship reached the capital, Aurelia watched his arrival from a high gallery window hidden behind mirrored glass. Elias walked between two armored guards across the landing court, still weak from injury, but standing upright. He looked around with careful eyes, taking in the alien towers, the blue flags, the vast, shining walls of the palace. He looked lost, but he did not look greedy. He did not look proud. He looked like a man trying not to cause trouble in a place that could destroy him, for reasons she could not explain. Aurelia felt her mind go still as she watched him. Stillness was rare for her. Precious, she leaned closer to the glass, usually. Even at a distance, crowds pressed against her senses. Their emotions came in waves, but around Elias there was a space, a quiet place. Not emptiness, but balance. As if his presence carried no hidden blade. For the first time in years, Aurelia wanted to be near someone. That frightened her more than anything. So she did what she always did with frightening things. She studied him. For 2 days, she watched from a distance during his questioning. He answered simply. During medical checks, he thanked the healers. When left alone in a waiting chamber, he did not search for exits or hidden devices. He only sat quietly, as if trying to understand how his life had become so strange that should have been enough. It was not. On the morning he was summoned to the throne hall, Aurelia knew she would finally stand in the same room with him. She told herself it was only duty. She told herself she would remain calm. She told herself she would follow protocol. But the moment Elias stepped into the throne hall, everything changed. Aurelia felt it at once. The pressure in the chamber, the fear, the judgment, the silent hunger of the quartet all pushed against her senses like a storm. The nobles wanted weakness. The generals wanted an excuse. Some of them already hated him simply for being human. And there he stood, alone under all of it. Then Elias lifted his eyes. For one brief moment, he looked not at the throne, not at the guards, but into the room itself, as if he knew everyone there had already decided what he was. And Aurelia felt something inside her break, not from pain, from certainty. She stepped forward before she had fully decided to move. The court noticed at once. But she did not stop. Down the royal steps, crossed the shining floor, past the watching guards and the breathless nobles. Each step brought her closer to the one mind in the room that did not burn. When she stood before him, she expected the noise of the hall to crush her. Instead, she found peace. Elias said nothing. He only looked confused, careful, and strangely gentle. Aurelia had not felt safe in years. Then, in front of the entire empire, she did the one thing she had never done in public and never imagined she would do. She embraced him, and the moment. Her arms closed around the human. She knew 2 things at once. First, the peace was real. Second, the palace would never be the same again. For a few seconds after Princess Aurelia embraced the human, no one in the throne hall moved. It was as if the whole palace had forgotten how the nobles sat frozen in their curved seats. The commanders near the throne held their breath. Even the royal guards, trained to react faster than thought, stood, still with their weapons lowered but ready. No one wanted to be the first to respond. No one wanted to be the first to make a mistake, because this was not a small mistake. This was not a strange moment that could be ignored. This was law, ancient law, and in the Zalthoran Empire, ancient laws were stronger than modern comfort. Elias Varen did not know any of that. He only knew that the princess had stepped back. The hall looked ready to explode, and every face around him had changed. Some showed shock, some showed fear. A few showed open hatred. He wished someone would explain what was happening. No one did at the top of the royal steps. Queen Sorelith rose from her throne. The sound of her robes brushing the crystal seat seemed loud in the terrible silence. She stood tall and still, one hand resting lightly on the arm of the throne. Her eyes fixed first on her daughter, then on the human man standing below. A lesser ruler might have shown anger. Sorelith showed nothing. That made the room even more afraid. One of the senior court advisors, an old noble with silver markings across his face, finally found his voice. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the act has been witnessed by the full court." Everyone knew what he meant. He was not speaking to inform the Queen. He was reminding her that this could not be denied, hidden, or undone. Too many eyes had seen it. The Queen gave a small nod. "I am aware," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried through the hall like steel. Elias looked from the Queen to Aurelia and back again. He could feel danger gathering around him, invisible but growing. He still did not understand why a simple embrace had shaken an empire. Then one of the military commanders stepped forward. Commander Varish was broad-shouldered, scar-faced, and known across the empire for his hatred of human border expansion. He bowed only slightly. "Your Majesty," he said, "the human remains an outsider under uncertain status. Protocol demands immediate review." Quiet stir moved through the nobles. Aurelia turned toward him with cold eyes, but she said nothing. "Commander," Varish continued, his tone respectful but hard, "the court must determine whether the princess acted under emotional distress, outside influence, or direct human manipulation." That last phrase struck the room like a blade. Manipulation. Several nobles murmured in agreement. Elias felt his stomach tighten. So that was it. They thought he had somehow tricked her. He almost laughed at the absurdity of it, but nothing in that hall felt safe enough for laughter. Before anyone else could speak, another voice rose from the left side of the chamber. "The law is clear." This time it came from High Archivist Turin, keeper of imperial records and one of the oldest living voices in the court. He stepped forward slowly, holding a thin staff of white stone. "In the First Era," he said, "the royal embrace was named sacred before blood, crown, and witness. Any person publicly embraced by a member of the ruling line stands under direct honor of that line. Harm against such a person is harm against the throne itself." A heavier silence followed. Now Elias understood a little. Not everything, but enough the princess had not just shown kindness. She had placed him under royal protection. That should have made him feel safe. Instead, it made him feel like the center of a storm. Commander Varish's face hardened. "The law was made for recognized allies, not unknown humans brought from a border attack. The law," Archivist Turin replied, "does not change because the court feels discomfort." That line struck several nobles silent. Queen Sorelth finally descended the first step of the throne platform. No one interrupted her. "The law stands," she said. Every head bowed at once. Elias saw the effect of those 3 words. Some in the court accepted them. Others clearly hated them. But none dared challenge the Queen directly. Then Sorelth looked at her daughter. "Princess Aurelia," she said, "do you deny your act?" A lesser person might have hesitated under such a question. Aurelia did not. "I do not deny it," she answered. Her voice was quiet, but clear enough for the entire hall to hear. A wave of reaction passed through the room. Some had hoped she would call it a misunderstanding, a ritual error, a moment of weakness, but she offered none of that. She had embraced Elias by choice. Elias? And now she was claiming that choice before the whole court. The Queen studied her for a long moment. Then she turned to Elias. For the first time since entering the hall, he felt the full weight of the ruler's attention. It was not cruel, but it was powerful enough to make his breath slow. "Human Elias Varin," Quain said, "until the truth behind this matter is known, you will remain within palace protection." Palace protection. The words sounded like mercy. The faces around him said otherwise. Some nobles looked disappointed. Others looked furious. Commander Varish lowered his gaze, but not before Elias saw the anger in it. Whatever this protection meant, many in the palace would not be pleased. By it, Queen Soralith continued, "No hand will be raised against him. No insult will be spoken in challenge to the royal act. Any violation will be judged as insult to the crown." That ended open argument. No one would dare attack him in the throne hall now. But Elias had spent enough time around tense people to know one truth. Danger did not disappear because it became illegal. It only became quieter. Aurelia stepped back to the queen's side, though her eyes remained on Elias for 1 second longer. There was something in that look, warning, maybe, or concern. He could not tell. The queen raised her hand. "This assembly is closed." At once, the court began to move again. Not with noise, not yet, but with controlled force. Guards took positions. Officials bowed and withdrew. Nobles turned to one another in tight whispers. The silence had broken, but not the tension. It spread through the hall like smoke. 2 palace guards approached Elias. They did not seize him roughly, but their closeness made it clear he was not free as they led him away across the crystal floor. Elias glanced back once. The queen stood above everyone, unreadable as stone. Aurelia stood beside her, still and calm. But along the edges of the hall, behind lowered heads and respectful bows, Elias saw something far more dangerous than public outrage. He saw calculation. This was no longer just about a strange moment in court. This was politics. Now power, old laws, hidden enemies. And as he was taken deeper into the golden halls of the palace, one thought became painfully clear. The princess's embrace may have saved his life in the throne room, but inside the palace, it might also be the reason someone decided he had to die. The chambers given to Elias Varan were beautiful in a way that did not feel comforting. The walls were made of pale gold stone that seemed to hold its own light. Thin lines of blue energy moved through them like quiet rivers. The bed was soft, the air was clean, and the windows looked out over the shining towers of the capital. To many beings in the empire, staying inside the royal wing would have been an honor beyond imagination. To Elias, it felt like living inside a decorated cage. 2 guards stood outside his door at all times. Another watched the hall at the far end. A silent floating machine passed by every hour, its crystal eye turning toward him whenever he stepped near the entrance. No one called it imprisonment, but the meaning was clear. He was under protection. He was also under watch. The first day passed slowly. A servant brought him food on silver trays and never once met his eyes. Another came with fresh clothes fitted to his size, clearly prepared in great haste. When Elias thanked them, both bowed stiffly and left as fast as they could. Word had spread through the palace. The human was protected by royal law. The human had been embraced by the princess. The human was dangerous or cursed or chosen. Everyone seemed to believe a different story. And none of those stories made life easier for him. By the second day, Elias had learned the shape of his allowed world. He could walk only through a small section of the inner palace. He could enter a garden court under guard. He could use the library chamber if an archivist was present. Everywhere he went, conversations stopped when he appeared. Some of the stares were curious. Most were not friendly at one point. While crossing a high glass bridge between 2 halls, Elias heard 2 young nobles speaking behind a half-open door. "It should never have happened," one of them whispered. "She touched him," said the other. "In front of the court, he must have done something. He is human. That is enough." Elias kept walking. He had heard worse in his life, but hearing it here, inside a palace where he had not asked to be, made the air feel colder. Still, not every face turned away. Princess Aurelia came to see him. That evening, she arrived without an announcement. moving through the chamber door with the same quiet grace that had stunned the throne hall. The guard stepped aside at once. She wore simple royal clothes that day, dark silver without jewels. And for a moment, she looked less like a distant symbol and more like a tired young woman, carrying too much silence. Elias stood awkwardly from the chair near the window. "I wasn't sure if I should bow," he said. Aurelia's eyes rested on him for a second. "You do not need to." That was the first thing she said to him in private. It was also the first thing in the palace that felt almost normal. She walked farther into the room, studying the space as if checking for hidden danger. Then she looked back at him. "Are they treating you well?" The question surprised him, as well as people treat a walking problem, Elias said. For the smallest moment, something almost like humor touched her face. "That means the servants were polite." He let out a quiet breath. That might have been a laugh, very polite, in a terrified way. Aurelia moved toward the window. The city lights beyond the glass painted soft blue shadows across her features. Up close, she seemed calmer than anyone else in the palace, but not cold. Not now. Elias took the risk of asking the one question that had been burning in his mind. "Why? Did you do it?" She did not pretend not to understand. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then she answered with care. "Because leaving you alone in that room felt wrong." That was enough to start a political storm. It was enough. She said, to tell the truth without words. Elias frowned. What truth? Her gaze shifted as if she was deciding how much to reveal. But before she could answer, a sharp metallic sound came from the far side of the room. Both of them turned. A small service drone floated out from a wall charging port. At first, Elias thought nothing of it. He had seen similar machines cleaning the halls and carrying trays. This one was shaped like a smooth silver sphere with 3 thin tool arms folded beneath it. Then one of the tool arms unfolded into a narrow blade. Aurelia moved first. Down. She shouted. The drone shot forward with violent speed. Elias threw himself sideways as the blade flashed past his shoulder and struck the wall, slicing deep into the golden stone. The machine turned at once and came again, its crystal eye burning red. A palace guard burst through the doorway, but the drone was faster. It spun low, cut across the room, and slashed the guard's arm before he could raise his weapon. Elias grabbed the nearest object he could find, heavy metal chair, and swung it with both hands. The chair hit the drone hard enough to knock it off course. Sending it crashing into a table of glass ornaments, the machine recovered instantly. It turned toward Elias again. Aurelia stepped between them. For the first time, Elias saw open force. In her, she raised one hand, and a sharp pulse of blue energy burst from a bracelet hidden beneath her sleeve. The drone jerked in midair, sparks exploding from its surface. It hit the floor, twitched once, and went dark. Silence slammed back into the room. The injured guard groaned near the door. Another 2 guards rushed in behind him, weapons raised, too late to stop what had already happened. Elias stood breathing hard, his heart pounding in his chest. The drone lay only a few steps away, its blade still extended. Aurelia stared at it, her face now colder than he had ever seen. "This was no accident," she said. One of the new guards knelt beside the machine. "Its command core was altered," he said after a quick scan, "by someone with palace access." No one in the room needed help understanding what that meant. Someone inside the royal palace had sent a weapon into Elias's chamber. Someone had tried to kill him while he was under royal protection. The wounded guard was carried out. More security officers arrived. Questions filled the chamber, but none of them mattered as much as the one truth now hanging in the air. Elias was not only unwelcome, he was a target. Aurelia turned to him. and for the first time there was no distance at all in her voice. "You are no longer safe here." Elias looked at the ruined drone and gave a weak, bitter smile. I was starting to guess. But his officers sealed the room and scanned every wall. A darker thought began to take shape in his mind. This attack had been clean, fast, planned. Whoever did it was not acting out of simple hate. They were afraid. And if powerful people inside the palace were this desperate to silence one injured human mechanic, then the real reason had to be bigger than scandal, much bigger. After the attack in his chamber, Elias was moved to a smaller room deep inside the inner palace. This room had no wide windows, no open balcony, and no view of the shining city. Its walls were smooth white stone, marked with thin blue circles that glowed softly in the dark. 2 elite guards stood outside the single door. A defense field covered the ceiling. Even the air felt controlled. It was safer. It also felt like the palace was preparing for war. Elias sat on the edge of a narrow couch, staring at the bandage wrapped around his shoulder. The service drone's blade had missed his neck by less than a hand's width. If Aurelia had entered the room 1 second later, he would already be dead. That thought stayed with him. Someone inside the royal palace had tried to kill him. Not frighten him, question him. Kill him. A soft sound came from the door. Princess Aurelia entered alone. This time she did not look calm. She looked tired in a way that went far beyond lack of sleep. There was tension in her face and something heavy in her eyes. She waited until the door sealed behind her before speaking. "No one will reach you here," she said. Elias looked up at her. "That's what people said about the last room." She accepted the sharpness of his words without offense. "You are right," she said. "I should have understood the danger sooner." That answer made him pause. Most powerful people blamed others when things went wrong. Aurelia did not. She moved to the center of the room and stood with both hands folded before her, as if holding herself steady. "There is something I should have told you earlier." Elias gave a short breath. "I'm starting to think there are many things no one told me." "There are." She met his eyes. "But this one matters most." The room became very quiet. Aurelia glanced once at the sealed walls, then back to him. "The attack against your ship was not random." Elias straightened. "What?" "The raiders who struck the Mercy Dawn were tracked for only a short time. Then their signal vanished in a region near old ruins at the edge of Imperial space." She spoke slowly, carefully, as if arranging dangerous pieces in the open. "Those ruins have been under secret study by the Zalthorn Crown for years." Elias frowned. "What kind of ruins?" "Very old ones. Older than our empire. Older than most known star nations." Her voice dropped lower. "Inside them, our explorers found a signal." He waited. "A living signal," she said. "Not alive in the way flesh is alive, but active, adaptive. It enters systems, minds, and emotional patterns. It feeds on fear, anger, and distrust. It does not fully control people. It pushes them. It sharpens what is darkest in them." Elias stared at her, trying to fit the words together. "You're saying some kind of ancient thing is affecting people?" "Yes, in the Empire." Aurelia nodded once. "It began years ago. Quietly, small changes at first, increased aggression, sudden paranoia. Cruel decisions where caution once existed. Some leaders became unstable. Others became violent in private. The Queen covered it with political explanations, border conflicts, pressure from rival houses." Aurelia looked away for a moment, but I could feel it. Because of her mind sense, Elias realized, "You knew who was changing." "I knew. Something was wrong," she said. "I did not know why at first, only that minds in the palace were becoming louder, sharper, more fractured. It grew worse over time." Elias thought of Commander Varish, of the hard faces in the throne room, of the hatred that seemed too eager, too ready. And no one could stop it. Our scientists tried to isolate the signal. Our healers tried neural treatments. Nothing worked for long. She took one slow breath. Then your ship was attacked. Elias's confusion deepened. What does that have to do with me? Aurelia stepped closer. Everything. For the first time since she entered, her voice held something raw beneath the control. When you were brought onto the patrol vessel, the effects changed. Panic levels dropped in the medical wing. 2 officers in early instability showed temporary clarity after speaking with you. A child with fear shock calmed in your presence. Even the low-level emotional noise in nearby crew softened. Elias shook his head. I didn't do anything. I know, she said. That is why it matters. He looked at her in silence. Aurelia continued. When I read the reports, I believed there must be an error. Then I saw you from the arrival court. The noise in my mind quieted. When I stood near you in the throne hall, it became still for the first time in years. Elias did not know what to say to that. I embraced you because my instincts recognized the truth before my training could stop me. She said, you are not carrying the same pattern the signal uses. Your mind resists it. More than that, your presence seems to weaken it in others. He gave a slow, disbelieving laugh. I'm a mechanic, not a miracle. Perhaps, Aurelia said. Softly, but the Empire may need a mechanic more than a miracle. That almost made him smile, but the weight of her words was too large. So the people trying to kill me know enough to fear what you are, she said. And what am I? Her answer came without hesitation. Proof. The word settled hard in the room. Proof, she continued, that the corruption in the Empire is real. Proof that it can be resisted. Proof that the court's hidden sickness is not permanent, and that a human outsider may hold the first clue to breaking it. Elias stood and began to pace, one hand pressed to his bandaged shoulder. This is insane, Elise. Aurelia said. They attacked my ship because of this signal. We do not know. The raiders may have been hired, or influenced, or used. Her expression darkened. But someone wanted survivors erased near that region. You lived. Then you reached us. That changed everything. Elias stopped pacing. Does the Queen know all of this? She knows enough. Enough. Aurelia's face tightened. My mother rules an empire that could tear itself apart if this truth becomes public. She must think as a ruler before she acts as anything else. That answer told Elias more than she meant to say. The Queen had not decided which mattered more, saving the Empire's stability or protecting the human who threatened its secrets. A cold feeling moved through him. So I'm not just under protection, he said. I'm evidence. Aurelia did not deny it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said very quietly, you are also the first hope I have seen in a long time. That landed differently, not as politics, not as strategy, as truth. Elias looked at her and saw, beneath the princess, the lonely person who had carried this knowledge almost alone. What happens now? He asked. Aurelia held his gaze. Now the Queen must choose. Choose what? Her answer came like a blade, drawn slowly from its sheath. Whether to defend the Empire's silence, or stand beside the human who could save it. The announcement came at dawn by royal order. The full court would gather at midday in the great throne hall. The Queen herself would speak on the matter of the human, the princess, and the attack inside the palace. The message spread through the capital faster than wind through open gates. By noon, the throne hall was full. Nobles in bright ceremonial robes filled the curved seats. Military commanders stood in hard lines near the center aisle. Royal advisors, archivists, judges, and Witnesses gathered under the high, shining ceiling. Along the walls, rows of elite guards stood with polished weapons and blank faces. No one spoke above a whisper. Everyone knew this gathering would decide more than one man's fate. Elias Varon entered under guard. He wore plain dark clothing from the royal stores, simple but clean, and the bandage still crossed one shoulder beneath the fabric. He walked between two elite soldiers, not as a prisoner exactly, but not as a free guest either. As he crossed the black crystal floor, hundreds of eyes followed him. Some carried open suspicion, some carried curiosity, some carried hatred, but a few, he noticed, carried something new: uncertainty. At the far end of the hall, Queen Sorelith sat upon the white crystal throne, tall and unreadable. Beside her stood Princess Aurelia in silver and blue, still as moonlight, her face calm but her eyes alert. Elias could feel the tension around them like pressure before a storm. He was brought to the center of the hall and told to stop. The room fell fully silent. Queen Sorelith rose. "The attack within the royal wing has been confirmed as deliberate," she said. Her voice moved across the chamber without effort. The command core of the service drone was altered by unauthorized hands. This act was not only attempted murder, it was a direct insult to the crown. A murmur ran through the nobles and quickly died. The queen lifted one hand. And yet the deeper matter remains unresolved. Why has this human become the center of unrest within our court? Why has fear gathered around him so quickly? No one answered. Commander Varish stepped forward from the military line and bowed. "Your Majesty," he said, "because the presence of this human has already broken order. He has drawn confusion around the princess, conflict into the palace, and weakness into public view. Whether by intent or not, he is a threat to stability." The words were sharp but carefully chosen. Varish was too clever to accuse Elias openly without proof. Instead, he accused him of being dangerous simply by existing. Several nobles nodded. Elias kept his face still, though his jaw tightened. Then Aurelia moved. It was only one step, but it changed the room at once. Stability built on silence is not stability, she said. Many in the court looked stunned. Princess Aurelia almost never spoke in public unless required. Now her voice rang clear through the throne hall. Commander Varish turned toward her. "Your Highness, with respect. This matter has already created enough damage. The damage began long before the human arrived," Aurelia said. The hall went still again. Queen Sorelith did not stop her. That was the first sign something had shifted. Aurelia stepped forward until she stood near the edge of the throne platform, where all could see her clearly. "For years," she said, "change has spread through the empire's highest ranks. Increased rage, sudden cruelty, fear where judgment should stand, distrust fed until it becomes violence." Her eyes moved across the nobles, the generals, the advisors. "You have all seen it. Many of you have lived beside it. Some of you have hidden it." No one moved. Some faces had gone pale. Aurelia continued, "The human did not bring this sickness here. He revealed it." Now the whispers returned, louder than before. Commander Varesh's expression hardened. "These are dangerous claims. They are true." That voice did not belong to Aurelia. All eyes turned to the throne. Queen Sorelith herself had spoken. A shock moved through the chamber like a wave. The queen descended one step. "The crown has hidden too much for too long. There is corruption in this court, not of law alone, but of mind and judgment. We believed silence would contain it. We were wrong." The room erupted in gasps, whispers, and half-spoken protest. Then it happened. 3 guards near the left pillar line suddenly broke formation. Their armor bore the royal crest. but their movement was wrong, too fast to direct. Instead of turning toward the crowd, they rushed the throne platform with weapons rising. Traitors. The hall exploded into chaos. Elite guards shouted. Nobles ducked. A blast of blue energy flashed across the floor as one attacker fired at the queen. Elias moved before he thought. He saw the nearest shot streaking toward the throne and threw himself sideways into one of the ceremonial shield poles beside the center aisle. The tall metal staff crashed over, striking the attacker's arm just enough to ruin his aim. The energy bolt slammed into the steps instead of the queen. A second traitor lunged toward Aurelia. Elias ran straight at him. He had no weapon, no armor, no plan. Just instinct. The attacker swung the butt of his rifle toward Elias's head. Elias caught the blow on his forearm, pain bursting through him, then drove his shoulder into the guard's chest. Both men slammed into the lower steps. The traitor was stronger, but Elias fought like a man who understood one simple truth. If he failed here, people would die. Aurelia raised her hand and sent a pulse of force into the attacker, knocking him back. The third traitor turned to fire into the crowded hall, perhaps hoping to turn panic into massacre. Before he could shoot, Queen Saralith herself struck. With one hard motion, she drew a thin blade of white light from the throne and cut across the air. The attacker's weapons split apart in sparks. Royal guards swarmed him. An instant later, the battle lasted less than a minute. Then it was over. 3 traitors lay restrained on the black crystal floor. Smoke drifted in thin lines above the shattered steps. Nobles huddled in fear. Guards stood with weapons ready, turning in every direction for more hidden enemies. And in the center of it all stood Elias, breathing hard, one arm shaking with pain. Still between the fallen attacker and the throne. He had not run. He had not hidden. He had protected them. The silence that followed felt nothing like the first silence in the palace. This one was full of recognition. Queen Saralith descended the remaining steps until she stood only a short distance from him. The full court watched, stunned and breathless. This human, she said, was brought here as a question. Her gaze swept across the hall. He stands now as an answer. No one dared interrupt. He has shown courage without rank, loyalty without obligation, and honor without reward. Let it be recorded before all witness that Elias Varon stands under the protection of the crown, not by accident of law, but by merit. The words struck the court harder than any weapon. Then Aurelia came down from the platform and stopped beside Elias. This time, she did not embrace him. She simply took his hand in full view of the empire. No one objected, no one could, because in that hall of power, fear, and old lies, the truth had finally become too visible to deny, and for the second time, the palace fell silent. But now, at last, it was the silence of respect.